I stand firmly with Ibrahim Traore. Firmly. If they dare touch Ibrahim Traore, they will regret. We are ready to go and fight in the Burkina Faso. Me, at my old age, I'll go and fight in the Burkina Faso army. All these people follow me and we'll go and fight in the Burkina Faso army. They should dare try Ibrahim Traore.
Burkina Faso just unveiled a fully made-in-Africa airplane. No foreign help, no Western blueprints, no outsourced tech. In a world where even powerful nations struggle to build their aircraft, how did this small West African country do it? And why is the West suddenly so nervous? Let's find out. At first, no one believed it. Rumors had been circulating for weeks across Ouagadougou. Whispers that a group of Burkinabe engineers, working quietly and far from media attention, had been building something extraordinary. But even those who heard the rumors didn't truly believe them. After all, how could a landlocked nation in the Sahel, known more for its resistance wars than for aerospace, possibly construct a functioning aircraft from scratch? Then came the day of the unveiling. No announcement in Paris, no stamp of approval from Brussels, no World Bank ribbon cutting, just a crowd, students, farmers, technicians, elders, all gathering to witness something they couldn't yet imagine. When the hangar doors opened, revealing the smooth silver frame of the aircraft, there was silence. Not disbelief, not applause, just silence. The kind that comes when you see a dream made real for the first time. This wasn't just an aircraft. It was proof. Proof that Africans didn't have to wait for others to bring them technology. Proof that engineering doesn't belong to one hemisphere. And more importantly, proof that Burkina Faso was no longer asking to be included, it was making its runway. The plane was not a symbolic showpiece or some experimental prototype destined for a museum. It moved, it lifted, it soared. And with it, so did something that had been grounded for too long: African imagination. It's not that African nations haven't had the talent. It's that for decades, much of that talent was trained to serve foreign companies, foreign patents, and foreign industries. From a young age, bright students were told to think globally, which usually meant learning how to work for someone else. A Burkinabe mind might design the component, but it would be branded in Europe. A Malian technician might perfect the engine, but the profit would fly elsewhere. This plane changed that. It changed who gets to take credit, who gets to innovate, who gets to dream in high definition, not just receive in low resolution. And while the crowd watched the aircraft disappear into the sky above Ouagadougou, a deeper thought lingered beneath the cheers. Why now? Because the truth is, this flight didn't emerge from thin air. It was the result of something deeper, something far more disruptive than just engineering skill: political will. For decades, African governments have relied on imported solutions. Health? Call WHO. Security? Invite US advisors. Infrastructure? Ask the French. But Traore's administration rejected that formula. He didn't ask what could be imported. He wondered what could be created. And when that question finally became policy, not just a speech or slogan, this aircraft was born. Traore's government had been quietly funding technical academies, investing in materials, refusing aid that came with strings, and most importantly, telling his people, "You don't need permission to build." The aircraft's very existence was the result of that shift. It didn't require flashy contracts. It required confidence. The kind of confidence that's been systematically denied to African nations for generations, not by fate, but by design. And here lies the real reason the unveiling mattered. Not because it changed Burkina Faso's economy overnight, but because it shattered something more sacred to the global order: the assumption that Africa must always follow. This wasn't a protest. It wasn't a rebellion. It was something far more dangerous to the old system. It was independence in motion. And yet, for something so peaceful, so technical, so quiet, the world's reaction was anything but calm. Because once the plane landed back on the runway, eyes turned. Not African eyes. They were already lit with pride. Western eyes. The ones that had been underestimated, ignored, and dismissed. Now they were watching. And they weren't just surprised. They were unsettled. So the question became unavoidable. Why are Western powers suddenly panicking over a plane from Burkina Faso? When the plane touched down and the dust began to settle, it wasn't just the crowd in Ouagadougou that was wide-eyed. In offices from Washington to Paris, from London to Berlin, alarm bells were quietly ringing. Not because of the engineering feat alone, but because of what it symbolized, a breach in the wall. You see, Western dominance over African development has never been maintained through brute force. It's been maintained through control. Control of finance, of intellectual property, of technical knowledge. Planes, satellites, pharmaceuticals, energy systems, the tools of modernity have always come with conditions. Want access? Sign this agreement. Want training? Host our advisors. Want funding? Accept our reforms. And then comes Burkina Faso, a country with no massive tech conglomerate, no sprawling aerospace legacy, no billion-dollar budget, doing the one thing Africa wasn't supposed to do: build without permission. That's what sparked panic. This aircraft wasn't just a challenge to the aviation industry. It was a direct disruption of the West's most carefully protected illusion, that Africa can't move forward without it. It started with frantic calls, mid-level diplomats asking for technical details, European defense contractors requesting access to evaluate feasibility. A few American firms floated friendly offers to support production scalability. But none of this was about admiration. It was about surveillance, containment, soft interception before things got out of hand. Because here's the secret that makes this even more unsettling for Western capitals. This plane wasn't just technically impressive, it was also politically strategic. It exposed a new kind of leadership, one that doesn't beg for inclusion but builds parallel paths. In truth, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Think back to when Libya under Gaddafi tried launching a Pan-African satellite program to break free from European telecom fees. The West panicked then too, not because the satellite threatened lives, but because it threatened leverage. That same fear has resurfaced. Why? Because the plane suggests something even more dangerous than sovereignty. Replication. If Burkina Faso can pull this off, what's stopping Mali from doing it next? Or Niger? Or Chad? What if dozens of African nations start investing in indigenous innovation, not just agriculture and textiles, but advanced technologies like avionics, cyber systems, and energy grids? The entire structure of foreign dependency, carefully crafted over decades, begins to wobble. And there's another layer of threat that Western intelligence circles aren't admitting publicly, but they're deeply concerned about: security asymmetry. A homegrown aircraft isn't just a civilian tool. It's the base for future military aviation, surveillance, border patrol, strategic transport. In regions where the West has used security chaos to justify its presence, the rise of independent air capabilities could neutralize that narrative entirely. So yes, Western powers are panicking, but not because of one plane. They're panicking because of what they can no longer control. And yet, the more they panic, the more transparent their hypocrisy becomes. These are the same governments that for decades have pushed African solutions to African problems. But when an African nation produces a solution, the reaction isn't applause, it's investigation. Their fear isn't just rooted in strategy, it's also emotional. Because if a country like Burkina Faso, once dismissed as too unstable, can build what they said was impossible, then the entire West African relationship has to be redefined. That's not just uncomfortable, that's existentially threatening to a system where Africa was always meant to be behind, never beside. So what happens now? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. There's only one way to stop this momentum. The West knows it. And it's the same strategy they've used for decades. Divide and dilute. Water down the achievement, seed doubts, suggest foreign interference, offer partnerships with the real goal of intellectual extraction. Already, rumors are being floated. Surely Russia must be behind this. It's Chinese tech hidden behind an African name. Anything to avoid admitting the truth, that Africans built this, that the mines are local, that the future is not being imported. It's being designed in Ouagadougou, not outsourced in Brussels. But what Western powers fail to realize is this: the moment of control has passed. And now all eyes are turning toward a new set of potential partners. Not the ones sending offers with legal clauses, but the ones sending tools without conditions. As the Western world scrambled to process what Burkina Faso had just achieved, analysts turned to the question they couldn't stop asking: how? How does a nation with no past in aircraft manufacturing suddenly produce something this advanced and keep it under wraps until it soared? Their conclusion, whispered in think tanks and hinted at in Western intelligence reports, wasn't built on evidence. It was built on assumption. They must have had help. But maybe they're right, just not in the way they think. This plane, while engineered and assembled by Burkina Faso minds, didn't materialize in a vacuum. It emerged from a silent but strengthening web of alliances, partnerships that exist not in press releases, but in shared grievances, mutual respect, and one unspoken mission: undermining Western monopoly over power, knowledge, and infrastructure. At the center of this emerging bloc are three names that make Washington sweat: Russia, China, and North Korea. None of these countries has confirmed direct involvement in the aircraft's development, and Burkina Faso has remained silent on specifics. But look closely, and the pattern becomes undeniable. Russia has dramatically increased its visibility in the Sahel since France was pushed out. Military training, security equipment, infrastructure advice, all delivered not with lectures, but with strategic cooperation. China, meanwhile, has long shifted its focus from roads and railways to technology transfer, often encouraging African nations to adopt Chinese models of state-led innovation. And North Korea, though shrouded in secrecy, has a peculiar history of sharing aerospace knowledge with aligned regimes far from its borders. What unites these three nations? They've all been treated by the West as pariahs, and they've all learned how to thrive under pressure: sanctions, isolation, propaganda campaigns. And now in Africa, they've found a region where their alternative playbook is not just accepted, it's welcomed. Burkina Faso is not joining an axis in any formal sense. That's not how this new game is played. This is not Cold War 2.0. It's subtler, smarter. No treaties, no flags. Just shared tools, shared ambition, and no apologies for being outside the Western orbit. The reason this is so effective is that it taps into something deeper than politics: dignity. When Russia provides military assistance without demanding political reforms, when China shares digital infrastructure without lecturing on values, when North Korean technicians whisper secrets of closed-circuit industrial design, what they offer is not just utility, they offer respect. And after decades of being patronized, bribed, or coerced by Western institutions, African leaders are beginning to ask, why not work with people who don't insult us while shaking our hand? What's happening in Burkina Faso is bigger than one plane. It's a signal that a new development model is taking shape, one that replaces dependency with strategic collaboration. And here's the twist the West wasn't ready for. These new alliances don't demand obedience, they empower choice. That's what frightens traditional powers the most, because the aircraft built in Ouagadougou might be the first, but it won't be the last. It will inspire others, not just to build, but to seek support from outside the Western bubble. Moscow, Beijing, Pyongyang, they're not offering chains, they're offering tools. And for a continent full of talent and ambition, that's all it ever needed. This moment also reshapes the meaning of foreign influence. In the past, foreign influence in Africa looked like occupation, extraction, or manipulation. But this new model operates differently. It's about unlocking local capacity, not replacing it. That's why Burkina Faso's government didn't need foreign engineers taking over the project. They needed software, materials, and training protocols. The rest came from home. And that scares the West more than any tank or missile. Because when you combine sovereign-minded leadership with non-Western allies who don't demand ideological conformity, the result is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and unstoppable. Yet the implications go even further. If this unspoken alliance continues to grow, not just with Burkina Faso, but across Mali, Niger, Guinea, Ethiopia, and others, then Africa stops being a playground for global competition and starts becoming a player itself, not as a proxy, but as a power. Which raises a new, even more profound question. If African nations are gaining both the technical capacity and strategic confidence to build on their terms, what kind of continent is being born? When power shifts, it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in, slow, quiet, and irreversible. But in Burkina Faso, the shift didn't creep. It took off, literally, in front of thousands. And for those who were paying attention, it signaled something that's been building for years beneath the surface of a bruised but unbroken continent. This isn't just about planes, technology, or foreign alliances. What we're witnessing is the birth of a new Africa, an Africa that no longer measures its value through Western praise, nor waits for foreign validation before acting. It's an Africa driven by clarity, confidence, and something far more dangerous to the old order, a sense of mission. For decades, the West carefully nurtured a particular version of Africa, one dependent on grants, stuck in structural adjustment programs, and forever framed as developing. The goal wasn't to suppress Africa completely, but to keep it just competent enough to serve as a resource hub, a market, a client. But the rise of sovereign African states, inspired by leaders like Traore, is puncturing that illusion. This new generation of African leadership isn't just breaking the mold, they're throwing it into the fire. They don't ask, how do we catch up to the West? Instead, they ask, how do we build our model, in our voice, on our terms? Burkina Faso's aircraft is a product of that question. But it's not the only answer being developed. Across the continent, we're seeing a quiet renaissance. In Guinea, leaders are nationalizing mining operations, demanding better deals for their people instead of accepting crumbs from multinationals. In Mali, military and digital infrastructure are being rebuilt not as an extension of French interests, but as an assertion of indigenous control. In Ethiopia, advanced hydroelectric systems like the Grand Renaissance Dam are proving that modern power doesn't need Western permission slips. In Tanzania, local vaccine research centers are reducing dependency on imported health solutions, rewriting what scientific authority looks like. These changes aren't isolated. They're connected by a psychological awakening. For the first time in modern history, multiple African states are embracing a single dangerous idea. We don't need the West to become powerful. And when that idea spreads, institutions built on dependency begin to crack. You can already feel the panic in Western policy papers. They no longer speak about helping Africa grow. They now warn about losing influence in Africa. Subtle, but revealing. The shift in language reflects the power shift. Even more telling is how African youth are responding. For years, young Africans were taught to dream of London, Paris, New York, as though progress existed somewhere else. Now many are dreaming of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Addis Ababa. They're seeing something rare, power emerging from within. That's what the new Africa is. Not just industrial development, but mental liberation. It's also Pan-African in spirit. Traore's decision to keep the aircraft's innovation within the continent wasn't just patriotic, it was strategic. He knew that a single nation's rise would always be vulnerable. But a continent-wide awakening? That's unstoppable. That's when defense becomes cooperation. That's when trade becomes protection. That's when innovation becomes independence. And yes, there are challenges. Sanctions, disinformation, economic sabotage. Western media campaigns paint these leaders as unstable or dictatorial. But the more these narratives are pushed, the more they fail. Why? Because ordinary Africans are seeing results, tangible ones, not promises in policy documents, but real-world wins, factories being built, currencies being stabilized, borders being defended. Burkina Faso's aircraft wasn't just a machine, it was a mirror. It reflected what African nations can be when they stop asking for access and start building ecosystems. And that's the final fear of the West. Not that Africa becomes independent, but that it becomes interconnected. Nigeria starts building chips, while Ethiopia powers them with electricity, and Burkina Faso ships them in planes built by its own hands. That is the nightmare scenario for those who depend on Africa staying fractured. Because once African nations stop competing against each other and start building with each other, a new force enters the global stage. Not one modeled after Europe, America, or Asia, but something entirely different, something African. Now, do you think, can Traore and Africa be stopped? But will the West still try? Let us know in the comment section how difficult this independence would be. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.